At this point, it becomes very obvious that there's a real disparity.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Look at the skull size.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely huge.
Wow. Yes.
So we think it's a smoking gun. I think it's a smoking gun.
What's the takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is this. In my opinion, this skeleton does two things. First, it points back to the veracity of the Native American oral tradition that there were giants here. Second, it points back to the biblical narrative of the Nephilim being on the earth. And I find that absolutely fascinating. The Nephilim are, in fact, the progeny of supernatural entities.
The biblical passage is about the Nephilim being a creation of the sons of God interbreeding with the daughters of men. So this interbreeding action created a race of giants.
When men began to increase on earth and daughters were born to them, the divine beings saw how beautiful the daughters of men were, and they took wives from among those that pleased them. It was then and later too that the Nephilim appeared on earth. When the divine beings cohabitated with the daughters of men who bore them offspring, they were the heroes of old, the men of renown. Genesis 6:2-4. Put their name in the title of a book, and whether it's fiction or nonfiction, chances are it'll zoom up to the top of the bestseller list, especially if you hint at deviant sex, pyramids, UFOs, and the end of the world. But who were the Nephilim really, and why is everyone so fascinated by them? Who you think they were depends in large part how you were taught to interpret Genesis 6:2-4. In biblical circles, there are three schools of thought concerning this, but a little digging will soon have you convinced that some folks who don't know any other passage in the Bible know this one. And if you throw in their interpretations, you've soon got a whole bunch more. So we'll focus on these so-called biblical ones. The first is that the phrase sons of God refers to royalty, explaining that kings were often considered godlike by their subjects. According to this view, these kings went around their kingdoms scooping up beautiful girls and putting them into harems for their own personal pleasure. A small minority of Jewish scholars held this view at one time, but most rejected it. The second is that son of God refers to the line of Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve who remained faithful to God, while daughters of men refers to the female descendants of first son Cain, the rebellious line. This interpretation appeared about 400 AD and was the first challenge to the angel view that majority of both Jews and Christians had held prior to that time. Some prominent scholars still teach this view. There's no clear consensus on why this view came to be, but the 5th century seems to be the agreed upon timing. Some say it's because the church was moving away from a belief in the supernatural by 400 AD, while others say that the worship of angels was actually becoming more popular by that time. Both viewpoints conclude that as a result, the angel view became an embarrassment in the church, so an alternative interpretation was sought. But the Seth-Cain alternative raises more questions than it answers. If Seth's line married into Cain's, then why did they only have male children? And why were they giants? Were only the males of Seth's line faithful and only the females of Cain's rebellious? If Seth's line had remained faithful, why was Noah the only family of the line to be saved? Then there's the fact that the exact phrase translated son of God only appears 5 times in the Old Testament, Genesis 6:2 and 6:4. The passage I opened with, and Job 1:6, 2:1, and 38:7. All of the Job references clearly describe angels. And that brings us to the third interpretation to which I subscribe, that the biblical account is to be taken literally. The phrase sons of God refers to disobedient angels, called divine beings in the Hebrew translation, who took on human form and entered into sexual union with human women. Their offspring were the Nephilim, or fallen ones of which we speak, huge and powerful beings who may have actually taken over the pre-flood world. According to tradition, in addition to being very large and strong, the Nephilim had enormous psychic abilities. They performed out-of-body experiences, levitations, mind control, time travel, mind reading, and remote viewing. They had the power of pronouncing and removing curses and diseases, and had ways of knowing and predicting the future. Having aligned themselves with Satan, the sources of their powers, they controlled and enslaved mankind and perverted God's creation almost beyond redemption. They were also extremely intelligent. They knew all about science, architecture, and engineering. Some believe they combined these skills with their powers of levitation to build the Great Pyramids and other great monuments around the pre-flood world. So that leaves us with three very important questions. Why did God flood the earth to begin anew when he knew sin would continue? Second, what was the sin in the days of Noah that was so grievous that the Lord killed all but 8 people on earth? And third, if the days prior to Noah's flood will be just like the days prior to the rapture, wouldn't the Nephilim or something similar be included? Genesis 6:11. Now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them. In all probability, there were as many humans living prior to Noah's flood as there are on the earth today, about 7 billion. During this time of plenty, the earth regressed back into blatant sin. Genesis 6:1. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Again, Genesis 6:1. There was one specific and creepy sin that God pointed out in Genesis 6:2, that the sons of God, angels, saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Again, Genesis 6:2. The sons of God, referring to, again, angelic spirits, Job 1:6, took the form of humans, Hebrews 13:2, and began mating with earthly humans and producing children. Ostensibly, the children had their own human DNA compromised. Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Again, that's Genesis 6:4. Satan vehemently hates mankind because they are created in the image of God. So now the original DNA that God had designed in his image had been successfully corrupted or changed into something not fully human. Only Noah and his family were left uncorrupted on the earth. These demonic subhuman children had to be destroyed. So God flooded the earth, killing everything except the 8 people in Noah's immediate family and 2 of every kind of animals and birds. So we learned that changing the DNA of humans to anything more or less than what God originally designed is a big deal to God. Tampering with human life is when God steps in. Let's look at changing DNA today. In the 1970s, scientists learned how to change and modify DNA, the software that runs plants, animals, and humans. In the beginning, we kept the genetic modifications to non-human things like crops. Wheat, for example, was genetically modified to grow to a certain height to make harvesting easier. In the 1980s, the FDA approved its first genetically modified GMO consumer product, human insulin to treat diabetes. This led to the FDA issuing regulations to control future biotechnology advances. In 1994, the first GMO tomato was approved. It looks like the same on the outside, but on the inside, its DNA has been modified to require less water, need less sunlight, and make the red color on the outside more vibrant. So this opened the door for biotech giants like Monsanto to begin altering other things we eat, to resist certain pests, diseases, environmental conditions, spoilage, or even resist chemical treatments like herbicides. In 2015, the FDA approved the first genetic modification of an animal to be used for human consumption. This leap of science now was treading on thin ice towards the modification of human life itself. Naturally, since the world believes humans are animals, now that they are modifying human DNA, scientists are now able to basically reprogram humans through genetic engineering. Scientists have figured out how to insert different DNA sequences called an engineered cell line to literally change who they are, how they think, and even how they respond. And this is where I really hope you listen. Imagine walking into your home and turning on the lights, not with the light switch, but just by thinking the lights on and what room or rooms you want the lights on. Then you turn on the TV and change the stations with your mind. You will be able to do this because you literally have your mind connected to the internet. Don't think for a minute that this is sci-fi.
This is Elon Musk, and he created the project Neuralink. Startup developers believe that the brain and a computer can be connected. To do this, you just need to implant polymer threads with electrodes into the human brain. They'll read the activity of neurons and stimulate them. To be honest, I can hardly believe it. Could this really be true? Yes, the innovative neural interface has already been invented. In it, electrodes are divided into 96 flexible threads thinner than a human hair. In total, they contain 3,072 electrodes. The company has also developed a special robot for implanting the threads. It will sew them into the nerve tissue on the same principle as a sewing machine, stitch by stitch. It takes only 16 minutes to fully integrate the interface into the human brain. This is incredibly fast for such technically complex operations. To read data from the threads, a special chip will be attached behind the ear. This will transmit data to a computer. In the future, developers plan on creating a system that would work over a wireless network. Implanting the device, as promised by scientists, will be no more difficult than vision correction surgery. And when that happens, humanity will have virtually unlimited possibilities.
They're working on this right now. And of course, if you can, by thinking, cause things to turn on and off, the other side of the coin is that having your brain connected to the internet opens up to receive input back to your brain from the internet. And this part makes my skin crawl. If you allow this type of access to your brain, whoever has control over the internet will be able to prompt you to respond differently. For example, you can be prompted to become less volatile, less conservative, or more liberal, or to favor gun control. They can reprogram how your brain responds, reprogramming your memories and how you think. If you're already rolling your eyes over all of this, the next part will probably send you over the edge. I'm just saying. Guys, in the past, I've put out many videos about Dr. Fauci and how he's bad news, long before he threw out that spaghetti noodle pitch. We have Gates that wants the world population to be reduced down to 500 million, and Big Pharma, they've proven to be not trustworthy. So let me tie all of this to Scripture. 1 John 5:19. The whole world lies in the power of the evil one. Matthew 24:37. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. Luke 17:26. And just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of Son of Man. So just like in the days of Noah, when human DNA was altered, causing the Lord to flood the earth, God will again intervene to save the planet using a worldwide judgment. We don't know how far along this will get prior to rapture, but this could be the reason that people who take the mark of the beast cannot be saved in the tribulation. Revelations 14:9-11. If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives the mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger. And he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day and night, those who worship the beast in his image, and whoever received the mark of his name. Revelations 14:9-11. So in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, those who take the mark of the beast could fall into the same category as those subhumans prior to the flood. Their human DNA is no longer fully human. Again, if you take the mark of the tribulation, there is zero hope for you. You burn for eternity. So it's important to note that the tribulation begins after the rapture and thus begins at a different time period or dispensation. Titus 3:5. He saved us not on the basis of deeds which we have done in righteousness. See, nothing you do or don't do can ever change your status of a believer in the church age. It's not about you in this dispensation, but rather what Jesus did on the cross 2,000 years ago. Colossians 2:14. Having canceled out the certificate of debt consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. Colossians 2:14. So my friends, keep the faith and be bold, because we have the Lord of the universe living in us, and it is he who is in total control. James 4:7, resist the devil and he will flee from you.